Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LJL official unofficial broadcast, bringing you day 17 of the LJL action. I will be your host for today, Alex, otherwise known as X, my master one on the internet, joined by the man in the middle. It's not who you think it is.
No.
It's the man that dodges all the bullets. It's Infinite Dodge. So, hello, how are you, sir? Welcome to the broadcast.
I am doing just fine. I'm a little bit off center, and I feel a little bit off kilter, as a result. So I gotta get lined up here. But otherwise, I'm ready for some very exciting games today. Should be a great game day.
Fantastic to have you here. You'll be play-by-play casting for our first two games. The man on the opposite side of your screen. Hello, Alex Nymera Hapgood. How are you, sir?
Yes. I'm good. Now I haven't cast any LJL for a while this split. It's been odd not being constantly kind of thrown onto that kind of like that anvil to be forged
so
into.
The last time we had you on, I had to sub in for you.
Yeah, well, internet issues have hopefully been resolved over the course of the last while, and schedules have cleared up. So I'm really looking forward to be here, and I'm gonna be here for all 4 games. So you're gonna catch a lot of me. My condolences, but I'll be here finally catching up some LJL.
Fantastic to have you here, mate. We've missed having you. Dodge obviously has been coming in so much. Like, sir, how have you been? You've been on the host, you've been casting, you've been doing a bit of everything. You haven't got you as a color yet. Quite yet.
No, we have. On
yes.
day 15, I came in for the first game and color cast alongside the lovely Middlecott, whose CGA did not have a great performance that day. We had to cast through it. But yeah, I've been filling all the roles around here. I'm like a Swiss Army knife. It's great to see.
And he does the FGC casting from time to time as well, ladies and gentlemen. Melee, if you need him, hit him up. DMs are open. But with that said, Chris,
is this like the Infiniverse of madness? Can we get? We'll work on that for next show. Yeah.
we gotta workshop that. Yeah, for sure. The Dodgeverse, maybe. I'm not sure. We'll get to it.
Creative Director Extraordinaire Chris Edgeworth, can I please bring up the standings for day 17 of the LJL action? Actually, that's going to be... No. We're going to go with this. I love this because this runs us through the schedule. Game number 1 is going to be CGA versus Axis. Following that, we're going to be having Rascal Jester face off against Detonation Focus Me, following off from that loss, which we'll talk about later. V3 Esports facing off against the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming for game number 3. And to round us out for the day, Sengoku Gaming face off against Burning Core. And if we can get those standings to see where all those teams are happening, V3 Esports, obviously monumental victory for them yesterday, a few days ago now, picking up their first win, finally 1-15. We don't have to talk about a streak anymore. Thank God, sweat goes away from us, gentlemen. Outside of that, though, we've got a pack in the middle, 4 through to 6. There's a 2-game difference at the moment, but that is very much all to play for. Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming have pulled ahead of pretty much everybody in the pack, but there are a few wins behind Detonation Focus Me and Sengoku Gaming, who recently exchanged blows. Obviously, we'll talk about that when those teams come up, but... Coming over to you, Nymera, you've not been on the broadcast. You've not get to see a lot of the games. At least in person, you've been doing VOD reviews and everything. You've been in the Twitch chats as well, sir. These standings, I mean, we kind of predicted them all the way back before the season even started. Remember, Hawks were going to be 3rd. We called this.
Well, we thought the Hawks would kind of be around that 4th benchmark, right? Because we thought that Rascal Jester would...
3rd.
Did you really say that? I thought we all put them in 4th. I thought we all put them in 4th.
Because, did I not have copium?
Yeah, because I think what ended up happening was we had this solid top 3 from Spring, and they looked like they were so far ahead. Now, there has been kind of like a little gap in the armor, and that has been Rascal Jester in that top 3. So that was the team which you look at those standings, and that's where I would look back to my former self and say, that's what I would have called out strange. The Hawks, though, they've been absolutely flying at this point, and we've waited such a long time for this team to do that. We kind of saw this culmination of this is a blank team, blank in 2020 when he was back in the region.
Yeah.
Took a little while to get rolling. Really took like half of that spring split before they started coming together. It took a little longer for the Hawks. That's been great to see. And then, of course, top of the table, very even too. But where I'm really focused today is this kind of playoffs chase, where that failing Rascal Jester, at least by their own standards, aren't quite safe yet, but at least they're ahead of your Burning Core, Axis, and Crest Gaming Act, who are all in the mix just going, can't afford to lose games now.
I love that you brought that up. 5 games left, ladies and gentlemen, including today for each of these teams. And Dodge, coming over to you with that in mind, are there any teams that you really want to highlight and say this is a team to watch if they're going to make playoffs? Would they not? Or are they already locked technically with like our top 3?
I think we really have to be concerned for CGA because it looks like they have a 1-game lead right now, but I do believe because of head-to-head shenanigans, if they lose today, they basically it's 6th or nothing as far as getting into playoffs here,
kind of how
as
that
opposed
works,
to Axis. So definitely a big scary time for all of our CGA fans out there. I don't actually know a whole bunch besides Middle Cop, but I'm sure he's sweating as these games are going to come through today. So definitely the coin flip of all coin flips hopefully has to land heads today for things to go smoothly moving forward for them.
Well, Dodge, you're casting alongside the original CGA UK fan, so I mean that's good talent to be alongside.
I did my time.
It's okay, Dodge, but let's actually use that momentum and take us into this first match. Chris, if they've got the official Kassin versus Dicey, I'd love to bring that up on the main stream at the moment. While I talk about that, though, that sets us up perfectly, though, Dodge. Crest Gaming Act, a team to worry about, a team to watch. 5 games left, and this is going to be against Axis. Axis picking up the first loss to V3 Esports. And that's an important place to start because we always said if there was any team that could lose to V3, it was probably going to be CGA on day 21. It was perfect. We had set this up and then V3 went and destroyed that. Dodge, coming over to you first, obviously, though, Axis versus CGA. You said this is something we have to be worried about for CGA. Why is that potentially?
Generally because CGA is a mess and their standing situation is very, very flimsy at best. We came into the season sort of thinking they were a borderline playoff team. That's where they've stayed. But if I am correct here, Axis will get the head-to-head 2-1 here if they do pick up the W's. So.
Yeah, when it gets the head-to-head, they're 1-1 right now.
Well,
yes.
Gentlemen, I want you to talk about which exact matchup on the laning phase or even jungle matchup, which is where I'm really excited because pick and bans are upon us, gentlemen. So please take it away.
Thank you so much, Swan. And yeah, we are right on into things here, Nightmare. And I think the place to look, as Swan so beautifully pointed out for us, is going to be that jungle matchup. Swamp and Kassin, big-time players for both of these teams. Kassin has a tendency to get a little bit over-aggressive, fly off at the handle a little bit, and won't be doing so on the likes of the Wukong or the Poppy in this game.
So, obviously, sorry, I should really close my windows. There's some noise in the back. Sorry. We're obviously on 12-13. So we're not on 12-14 yet, which has had a couple of champion changes and we've seen a resurgence of some early game champions, Pantheon, Jarvan, early gankers. But still, when you have players like Hybrid and Sanctuary on your team, you're likely going to be bot side focused. That means you really want stability elsewhere and stuff that can push in and affect bot side. Taliyah has quickly been evolving as this champion that just does that. In terms of mid laners, they can outshove a Taliyah. There is basically nothing left on the table. It was kind of like what Ari used to do in Spring, where you just kind of trade very heavily at level 1, get control of the wave, and shove in. Now Taliyah doesn't even have to interact. You just spam your Q on the wave, it gets shoved in, and your jungler can start feeding off of that. So picking that up from CGI's first pick, I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely so. That AoE that was returned to Taliyah on the mini rework, definitely a big boon. Seeing that in the mid lane a whole lot, but the response here coming through from Axis is going to be the Blind, Gwen, and the Sivir pickup.
Okay.
We were discussing this beforehand. Sivir feels like a band-aid for some of these struggling teams.
Well, Zeri is an okay answer here, but only if you outscale and support at the same time. I think Zeri Yuumi could end up working at this point, but then you have to at that point, you're going to have to eat even more jungle bans. You've already got the Vi away, you've already got the Poppy away, and the Wukong's off the table too. Alistair, look, I get why this is good into Sivir in some ways, because you can't spell shield the full combo, which means you are reaching your target, but I really think if you're going to outscale in team fights, you need something to start buffing up your carries, because Sivir, when you don't have like enchanters on the table just does more damage than Zeri right now. It's been a while since we could say an AD carry can do more damage as Zeri, even late game, but Sivir's reached that kind of point. Those ricochets are incredibly powerful. Now, looking at just the AD carries locked in, and then of course with the Gwen in there too, I feel like Axis are currently winning the damage battle in terms of the carries they have on the table.
Yeah, it could definitely play out that way. We'll have to see how CGA utilizes the second phase of bans here to sort of pinch the pool a little bit. One guy we won't be seeing here is the Trundle. No junglers picked up in the first rotation, means that's where there's going to be a lot of focus. What are you expecting to come on through here, Nye, for one of these highlight players, we'll call them, in Swamp and Kassin?
Okay, so when you're looking at what Swamp can do here, I think you are again at this point you actually have a few options. Normally at this point in the draft, if you've locked in a top lane and a bot lane, you're normally kind of starting to see where you want to put resources, and that can influence what kind of champion you want to pick. I think at this point you are still looking for something that can provide a little bit of engage. Rakan, when he's on his own, can get a little bit awkward in that kind of regard. So something like that Trundle would have been quite nice in terms of having a pillar, but of course they still have a few other options to at least aid that Rakan on the way in. So that's what I'm looking for in terms of the archetype of champion.
Yeah, and now it does come down to the final ban here for CGA. They're really thinking on it. Will be the victor taken away? Axis, what do you expect here? Is it going to be the counterpick saved for the mid lane?
Well,
they already see Taliyah.
Yeah, they already see the Taliyah, so I don't think that matters quite as much. When it comes into kind of countering something like a Taliyah, I mean, you can still maybe go for something like an Ahri here. Ahri's not awful, but I mean that'd be something different. That's actually more of a Hachimecha special. We've seen that over the years, but it's coming into Swamp. And that is something which doesn't have a dash, but still closes down your carries. I'm worried that Skarner has to go through an Alistar who can just pop ult and run away from you, and I don't think that's going to be very easy. But at least it can give you some threat without having to get be completely countered by something like the Unraveled Earth.
Yeah, could be a big pickup here. That Crystal Scorpion at least has some point and click for the Zeri, but the Xin Zhao coming on through will definitely be able to beat up on that Skarner early if they do cross paths. So it's a very Kashin-like pickup here to aid in that early aggression, and that's hype there.
That is. So that's going to be the Akali top lane into the Gwen. I don't think Akali does that awesome into Gwen anymore. Ever since Gwen had this mini rework herself, a readjusting of what the champion does, she takes shorter trades much harder, but she can take them less often because of her equal. Oh my god, Megamin, the Z1 trick. The Z rookie that came in last year has pulled out the main on stage. And you know what? It isn't a bad pick this game. Everyone on this team is, besides the Alistar, open for assassination. This is a genuinely good Z angle.
Yeah,
I don't think I've said that in Pro for a while. This is a genuinely good Z pick.
I mean, when was the last time we saw the Z mid even? I mean, it had its resurgence as a jungler, Pride Stalker, S of M, you know, these sort of weirdo junglers, so to call them, did prefer it, but in mid lane...
When was the last time we saw Z? You know what? I can actually
Oh, man.
I can go look for that. When was the last time it was played? It was played one time in OCE by Mikru, who is on Mammoth. It was a loss. That is the only time it has been played like this season. In terms of before that, yeah, you're looking back at like one game in MSI, and that's it. We've had 2 games of it effectively around the place, but it's a very rare pick to see nowadays. It is a very skill-dependent pick. It's not reliable, but Megaman is a main of the champion. It's something that we picked up about this player on their way into this league, and we thought, okay, are they going to start playing these assassins? No, not really. Megaman kind of took a couple of chances to play a few of them, but then went on to some more reliable picks. But now we get to see the Master of Shadows in the mid lane. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, this should be so exciting. A big assassin angle in the mid lane now. This is, of course, before 12-14, so some of those lane sustain nerfs have not actually come through yet. I wonder if this is a bit of that solo queue good feeling leaking into the pro game a little bit. We have seen it with the Alistar, I feel like, as well. But either way, it's just going to be so cool to see what Megaman can do here on a signature pick.
So what this signals to me now is Axis have side lane options. You have a Gwen and you have a Zed, and you just kind of shove them into the matchup that you want them to be in. And if Axis are good at your lane allocation, they can play the wider map. Now, this isn't something that Axis and the wider LJL roster have been able to do very much. We typically like to set up around objectives, and that's not something, therefore, if you play around side lanes, which is kind of more commonplace, right? You're kind of only looking at someone like DFM who have done that more often than not. And often they do that with big globals. They'll do that with someone like a Twisted Fate or a Nocturne or a number of other champions that they've played. So this will be a bit against the regional identity from Axis. I also think it's a little bit difficult for them because you are playing against a roaming Alistar. If he turns up to a play, it's very hard to kill him, especially post level 6. You're playing against Akali, who's incredibly hard to shut down. And you're going to have a Spellbook Exhaust on Talia, who's your other target in those side lanes, who, if you get Boots of Lucidity, is going to be getting so much exhaust cooldown and other defensive summoner cooldown, it's going to be quite difficult to shut down that champion. So, for me, this is going to be a question of how much can Axis show us on a side lane game, and can CGA just force Axis to come to objectives, because that's where Axis comp doesn't thrive.
Yeah, and it's going to be so wild to see who's going to be affecting those side lanes, specifically the bottom lane. I feel like you were highlighting it in the Champion Select that CGA, often the hybrid show, right? So we've seen the game plan in solo queue. You take this assassin, you shove out, and you go and feast on the AD carry on repeat. Feels like a very savvy pickup here to keep this Zeri from popping off and secure a golden road for your Sivir moving forward. And it all starts with these junglers, right? They're clearing from top to bot. I expect we're going to see some action down there being forced real soon.
Yeah. So, top lane's going to be a bit of an island. No early ganks onto this lane, but I think both these champions are fairly slippery. Even without Flash, they're so safe. That's just a terrifying thing. That's just not modern League of Legends, folks. Top lanes don't actually need defensive summoners. They just run away from you, and they're fine. But that will be something to track, of course, where these junglers first make their impact felt. Cassin, when he came into the league, we talked about Megaman. When he came into the league, we were wondering whether this guy was going to pick up the Zed, pick up his main champions. Cassin, on his way into the league, was a huge Xin Zhao player. This was before Xin Zhao was as meta as it was. He actually played it before that champion really came back onto the pro scene. And this has been a hallmark champion for this player for quite a while now, having that early aggression, the ability to make his presence felt early on into the game. As it stands right now, though, his bot lane has been shoving in. They get vision. What that means is that Cassin has a better platform to make plays about the place instead. And he takes that scuttle and is immediately looking for a fight.
Yeah, this is what we were expecting out of good old Kazin coming into this game. Does get that bot Scuttle Crab, so Swamp immediately pinging. Gotta run up to that top river and try and trade evenly here. But thankfully, I think for both of these AD carries, they breathe a sigh of relief. No early action in the bot lane. They can continue just ticking down those calls.
Sits there looking at Skada and Xin Zhao brandishing their weapons, and they're just like, I have a cull. I'm not helping here.
I'm reaping. Please come back when it is time for me to sow. I'd appreciate it greatly.
It's literally just sat there watching the junglers like firepower, and then you know that meme, which is the it's like it ain't much, but it's honest work. That's just the AD carries just somewhere off, like sipping a brew.
Yeah, that's a bit of empathy from a top lane main to an AD carry. It feels like we're both very much stuck in these very specific expectations, and it's just our duty to fulfill them, even when it's not fun. And you know what seems like it's not very fun, Nymera, is playing a Gwen versus a Kali matchup.
So, you say that, but Gwen got the early shove-in, and it's not like... Oh, he's going for it.
Yeah, Megaman under turret, the exhaust, as you pointed out, doing so much with the ignite. The last kick, he actually gets it! Flash the shades! Megaman absolutely styling, skill issue for sure. No luck whatsoever. Megaman the superior player here on the Zed.
One Trick Pony takes it down to one last tick. The minions helping out. I actually wonder if Kaken hadn't walked up to look for the last bit of damage, whether he would have lived. This came down to minion auto attacks. This reminds me a lot of when Faker used to play the champion, where he would go for these early tower dives on Zed. It's not what we've seen in pro play for a while. I mean, Megaman doesn't even get the double shuriken. If you get double shuriken here, it gets even worse. But look at this. One minion auto. Legitimately, if Kaken doesn't walk up, I think he lives because that minion doesn't hit him. I think that's a slight miscalculation, but it is the finest of lines. And Megaman on this assassin gets first blood.
Yeah, that is so huge. We'll be able to hopefully start rolling that snowball down the hill off the back of this momentum. Going to take a little while to catch up on this wave that did just get shoved in and equalize the CS, however, so that opens up Kakun to come down here with Kassin, always looking for these aggressive angles into the opposing jungle. Swamp wants to see if they go in on the Gromp. There it goes. Will it reset? Nemo coming around. I don't know if Swamp wants this one. Dicey now coming as well.
So the thing is, Wave isn't under tower from CGA, so they can't force the bot lane from doing this.
Yeah, it's going to be Kassin now deep within enemy territory, trying to find this backline, now trying to get on out of dodge. Oh my goodness, that boomerang blade doesn't take his life, and now it's Megaman in the thick of things. He is going to get chunked out. He is going to get zapped into oblivion, but Zinzao will be the trade. It's a 1-for-1 there.
So 1-for-1, but Megaman is dead. And this is important in this case because even though Megaman won that last fight, Kassin was starting to get sorry, not Kassin, Kakun. I'm gonna get that messed up so much first time casting these two on the ref, but you're getting to the point now where Megaman's been forced out of lane for a while. Speaking of top lane, solo kill coming in for Nap while we're talking about the implications on the rest of it. That matchup, which I said maybe not so much of a counter anymore, Nap says, shut up, let me get those kills.
Yeah, and we will get this little flashback into how exactly this whole skirmish did go down. And Kassin going to get that Gromp healing pretty huge, but then it's going to just be the split up, right? Where it's like two deep agents under enemy territory.
And two big factors which come to this is one that we picked out, bot lane wave isn't actually under tower. So that means that Axis bot lane can come to play. The other thing is actually CGA don't have level 6 on Talia. If you have at least at the start of that fight, which means that you don't have the Weaver's Wall to join the fight even more quickly. So that kind of led to a couple of extra factors in that play getting just a little bit messy. And these are teams which have shown a little bit of that mess through this split so far. They have been willing to fight, especially CGA. That's something of an identity for them as a team, which we've seen for many years at this point. But in this kind of game, which is so important, reminder, if Axis win this, they get that head-to-head and they leapfrog CGA in those standings. They put the playoffs hopes and dreams into question a little more, and that mess will not be helping them. Now, we've got a couple of people roaming mid. Swamp, of course, having Flash, having Ultimate, but how much can they really get out of Slayer here with the summoners available?
They're bringing more and more people. It's a party in the mid lane. It's a bit of a J-Ram, but Swamp now hovering into the territory of Kassin thinks better than trying to take that relic back.
Very nearly lands the wind becomes lightning. That could have been an interesting fight. I think it would have been a flash force, but not much more outside of that. So, fairly close game. Gold getting shown around onto a couple of these assassins now. Akali on one side, Zed on the other. I really hope we get an Akali versus Zed 1v1 at some point in this game. That would be so cool to see. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of Pro League, seeing those crazy high mobility fights. We're going to have a bit more of a grouped one, though, potentially around Herald. We're starting to fight.
Yeah, there goes the Weaver's Wall. Cocoon finding the nice separation, and this could just be all the zone control they need to pick up this Herald and run, complete the heist. They still want to fight. Nemo getting chunked out, doesn't have the 6, and that is going to be the first kill going over to Megaman, but now it's Kassin moving forward. So many low health bars. What can they find? The perfect execution going to be taking them down. That is the 1-for-1 already, but Nap now in the bad spot. Sangchu just auto-attacking him down, but it doesn't end here. Nightmare Kassin going forward. Swamp not in time to back it up, and that is the extended 2-for-2.
I believe it's the 2-for-2. Megaman Sangchu down on one side, and then on the other side, I think we see Nemo fall for the first time alongside Nap. So it's going to be fairly even as these things. But again, just having to ask that question of, hang on, how many people died? Because it's such a split fight coming out of basically both teams showing up to Herald and going, all right, okay, let's just go for this. We can play this. This shows, again, how much these teams are starting to try and buy into this mess, buy into the scrappiness. But while this is happening, you're starting to trade gold. Once again, the people picking this up primarily are these assassins. Of course, Sangchu's starting to pick up has picked up 2 kills as well on their own. Gonna go back to this replay, and there are some really important factors we need to take into account of this too, because last time the caveat was actually level 6 wasn't hit by Talia. This time it's actually on the Alistair. This isn't a straight off of Spawn Herald. You've had a couple more waves to pick up if you want that extra XP, but Nemo still hasn't had the ability to get that Unbreakable Will. Skarner sees that and says, all right, okay, let's get this Alistair out of there. No crazy headbutt pulverized combo coming through. What it does do is buy enough cooldowns to let Nap reach the back line. Nap is a player who has always managed to do that, regardless of iteration of this comp, of this team. He's been doing it on Ornn. He's been doing it on Renekton for years. Shows it on the Akali this split first time, really. And in this fight, you can see, again, the identity of this CGA team finding their way into these team fights and making it a mess, being so entertaining to watch.
Yeah, definitely so. And the big swing coming afterwards, they did get that Herald collected. They got the plates in the mid lane. That's where a large amount of this gold lead does come from, as it stands at 11 minutes, going to be 1.4k in the favor of CGA. But Axis on the back half, while we were in the replay there, Nightmare did at least pick up the Mountain Drake for themselves.
Okay.
So they got a bit of a consolation prize.
Yeah, and it's not going to be the 12-14 dragons, of course. We're still on 12-13.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be the 50% increase on that, but still, a Mountain Dragon is one of the best basic stats. Kaken eating a hard trade.
Yeah, there goes the death mark. The stopwatch is there. Dicey can't find the follow-up CC through that stasis. Nema now here to match his counterparts, Rome. A little bit of posturing, but nothing too scary for that Talia.
I mean, that's stopwatch down, and this is stopwatch down before you've gotten Mythic. You are not getting a Zhonya's for another 2,000, 3,000 plus gold. Top lane, that 1W, that interaction, that is a really specific interaction, because you see the Shuriken Flip come in, and Shuriken Flip was obviously cast within that W, but, oh, whatever, Sanctuary's just gonna die. We don't even get a chance to talk about that one. But yeah, very specific timing on the Gwen W, because the Shuriken actually hits a little later than you think it should do into the animation. It means that actually Akali's just beyond the Gwen W when it actually registered. It means that Yellow Yoshi gets out of that alive. Ultimate's traded, Ignite's traded. And I am loving how we're seeing, again, a committal to these assassins going in for these big plays.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff. 2014's throwbacks in spades. Not very often you get to see these assassin v assassin matchups in pro these days. Got to savor every minute of it. And going back to the top lane matchup, it's nice that Yeliashi does have some tools to keep himself safe from that assassin of Nap. Definitely been a player with a lot of room to grow over the split, coming in as that poppy sort of one trick, expand to other tanks. We've seen some of this Bruiser play come out, look a lot better.
Then that's a really good point, actually, because, you know, we talked about Megaman because obviously he's on his one trick now, the one which he had when he came into the league. Yellow Yoshi is not on a dissimilar trajectory, right? Where he's come in as a player who is basically touted himself as the best Poppy in Japan. And
rightfully so.
He's a hell of a good Poppy. He's a very good player of it. But Axe is picking up these players, developing them, allowing them to play these other champions too, and kind of show them the whole toolkit of what you can do within Professional League Legends. Then occasionally letting them go back to it when the time is right. It's been intriguing to see both solo laners joining. Speaking of those solo laners, not going to have the mid laner at this top lane play, but you do have two other members helping out Yeliashi.
Yeah, he's really trying to sell this Nap, walking forward, trying to proc that passive, but now the double back starting to get this is so Fiesta.
W's used, okay. When the W's used, that's when you're starting to wonder, but Caston's here to cover the base as well. Both teams knew that a lot of people off the map. What you're typically doing at this point when you are a team on the Rift, when you're looking at, okay, what can we do to track people? Obviously using your vision. There's a lot of vision around bot side from both of these teams, but also you're looking at where people are showing on waves. Both these bot lane waves are getting cleared very quickly because you have a Sivir as well. That tends to make that very easy to just go, okay, right, we're leaving bot lane now. And that means that the supports get freed up. Both these supports want to start roaming around, and both these teams are now going to have to pay very close attention if we are going towards these side lanes, as we thought they might do with Axis' comp, where these supports start and factor into it.
Yeah, and these supports going to be the big difference makers with the objectives about to hit the Rift once again. Herald in just 20 seconds. It's not going to be that local gold second Herald like we have on live, so not as valuable, still in that sort of just turret finisher stage, but without any turrets taken yet, it could still be critical. A bit of a head start before this Ocean Drake does hit the Rift in 30 seconds. I'm curious to see, no matter if they go towards this.
I'm curious to see what happens just before it, actually, because we've seen that Axis have been willing to look for plays which can start blowing some cooldowns. Now, Kaken, of course, doesn't have a stopwatch anymore. Does have Exhaust, does have Flash, and has a Crown of the Shadowed Queen as well. It's an item which we don't see as much, but when you're into a champion like Zed, who does want to take these incredibly harsh combos, even if it is just like the double shuriken with the shadow combo, that item can get a lot of value. I'm wondering what Axis can kind of get at this point before the fight starts to really evolve in earnest. The CGA not committing towards the bot side of the map just yet. They're going to take that second herald, and of course, again, as you're saying, not quite the updated one just yet. And Axis aren't finding themselves being confronted on the dragon. So while we said these objectives are coming up, nothing's shown for now.
Yeah, no big fights. Nice opening does appear for CGA to get
See what happens if Herald's locked. So Herald's come in. This is just going to tower come down. Yeliyoshi over the wall. But I don't think Axis have the best angle for this right now. They're going to have to go through some choke points, and that's why Alistair can start threatening huge combos.
Yeah, now it is going to be the fight breaking out in earnest, and it's Kazin actually finding the Gore Drinker heals. I thought he was overextended, but they do find the first blood of the fight. Now many flashes forced into Axis territory, but Nap's following him with that ultimate, dashing all about the place, as that was a very close zippy zap, but CGA is still thoroughly winning that fight.
Yeah, and I think Axis just chose the wrong terrain. Again, when you're retreating from that dragon, if you're trying to find around that mid lane, you need to make sure you have the right angles. Choke points are good for your Sivir, sure, but you're still not having great target access. I thought initially Kassan had made a big mistake. He's on full vision when he gets seen there, but at least he has vision of the enemy team from that pink ward. This Crescent Guard does ridiculous work to buy time. But while this is happening, look, Sangshu, not autoing, not doing anything. At least Hybrid can start hopping over the wall, committing a W to it. I think the AD carry auto attack uptime is really a testament to, again, the terrain which Axis chose to fight on. I think this was in their hands, and this loss of that fight is kind of on them choosing to start that fight.
Yeah, and it does look to be the Infernal Drake coming on through, so playing around these now opened up spaces of terrain going to be even more of a critical strategic decision for these teams going forward. Anything that makes it easier for a Sivir or a Zeri to run you down, definitely going to be scary when you're dealing with two teams that play through the AD carries heavily. But it feels like Axis has done a decent job here, Nightmare, sort of slowing the advance. CJ really winning the fights, but at least they've picked up these two Drakes in response.
This is what I really wanted to return to, because yes, you can say that CJ aren't like just blasting the game right now. See what happens if this comes down to a fight around bot side. Doesn't look like it will, but Axis, I feel like they really should be starting to move back out into those side lanes at this point. I think the worry they have is that when they've been doing that, the Akali has been winning against the Gwen, and I would imagine the Akali is going to be winning against the Zed too at this point. Akali is just such a strong side lane champion, and Nap has been having a very good game so far. He's actually built up the Night Harvester. I've seen a couple of opinions on this item compared to the Proto Belt. Akali doesn't really care for ability haste. It's not really an item which works for her in terms of those raw stats. The active is very good when it's now had the lowered cooldown from the last time it was touched, but not having the extra magic penetration when you're kind of not gone towards that Proto Belt makes you feel a bit bad, but it doesn't actually matter so much in this game because Naf's just been playing so damn well. It doesn't actually matter about the itemization. It's still AP on the board.
Yeah, getting bigger and bigger is this Akali. Played through lane very well, has that CS, and has both sums ready to come in and wreak some havoc once the time comes. Axis trying to position around this top river, try and find some sort of a pick. Definitely feels like they're a bit aimless right now,
but
sort
look
of
what Axis
waiting
is
for
doing.
the game to come to them.
They're just letting the Akali go into a side lane and say, well, that's one side of the map won. That's really been the tail of it right now. So for Axis, this is going to be a problem-solving measure in what can we do about this Akali that's breaking up in our side lane play, and what can we do to just kind of nullify that? Because the problem is, if they wanted to go towards side lanes and they're losing one of them, their game plan becomes that much harder. They're down a lot of gold. They don't have their primary win condition in a good spot right now, and that is worrying. CJ actually, at this point, feeling fairly comfortable, winning the group fights, winning in other areas of the game too.
Yeah, we'll see if they can pull a guaranteed, or rather an iconic CGA moment and find a way to lose this game from this position. But Nap doing a great job in the side lane, so slippery and hard to catch, as you point out, means that Axis really doesn't have a good answer. Yeliyoshi now back on that Mythic, but Nap, a half an item ahead, has that alternator on top of the Night Harvester, going to be so much burst, and then can just go in the Shroud before Yeliyoshi can really vamp back off of him, gives him a lot of space, but here they come down into the side lane trying to find him.
Oh, there's no support coming either. This could be a dead Akali. See if the W cooldown's there. What can you do about this?
Yeah, it's going to be R1 into the Shroud, just trying to stay evasive. R2 sure can flip. You can't catch that ninja today.
Okay, so that's going to be the perfect execution blown. That is like effectively the cookie cutter escape from the Skarner at that point. You need to get that R2, the untargeted dash, use the W to buy time for it. So now, without that tool, but oh, it's a good shove. What's going to come of that?
It's actually going to force Swamp's flash. It was the nice follow-up coming through from Hybrid, and now Yeliashi chunked out before the Drake does spawn in just 5 seconds. That's a nice health bar advantage already coming up for CGA, and that's the R1 coming out from Yeliashi.
Yeah, I'm about to say, getting that needlework out of Yeliashi really big. That's a huge amount of damage and teamfight threat now gone. We thought that was going to be important for the Akali to waste that ultimate, but Axes lose their positioning and don't get towards it.
Yeah, they grab up that Infernal Drake, and now they might just grab up the kills as well. Yeliashi going to go down inside that Shroud. Hybrid chasing with the flash to find one onto Swamp. He goes next. At least going to find the 2. Maybe could continue the chase down or even look at a Baron angle from here. CGA really feeling themselves, looking like more and more their game to lose as Sangchu forced to flash away as well.
Oh, Sangchu just trying to greed for those wolves, trying to take away some of the collateral damage that's going to come through from CGA. When you win big fights, tend to run into the enemy jungle, take their resources with them too. And CGA find themselves winning another grouped fight in this all-important game. You know, it's a little early to start talking about whether this is the do or die moment, but getting this win against direct competition in regards to this close playoffs race is so important. We talked about the cooldowns that were blown just before this fight came up, and with that needlework down, yeah, I really think Axes were struggling in that teamfight damage department. Once again, Sangchu is actually not auto-attacking for most of this fight. Once that Gwen is focused down without really CGA suffering anything for it, that's effectively fight over. Axes really struggling to hard commit to a fight and get Sangchu involved.
Yeah, it's looking dire for Axis. Will at least answer back a top lane tier 1 here, and maybe Megaman could look for more, but doesn't have a good idea of who's around, so can't commit to it. Just has to back off with the tiniest of consolation prizes, but 6k the gold lead here, and critically it's a 3-item Zeri for Hybrid.
Yeah, and Hybrid has been just the more impactful AD carry. Part of that's draft, part of that's playstyle, but I do really feel like at this point you have 3 items on the Zeri who hasn't been struggling to do damage. Axes, if they weren't losing these fights before, even if they start getting loads of key cooldowns, if you don't get onto this Zeri, fight is just over.
Yeah, and we all know it's the Hybrid show when CGA plays. They're going to be using all these tools that they've drafted, whether it is that Crescent Guard or the Headbutt Pulve, whatever you need to keep Hybrid safe, allow him to play up and play scary like he is right now, chunking out Dicey, just looking for the vision. CGA in a very, very nice position to take this Baron once they can find some sort of a pick, or just leave Nap content in that side lane to continue punishing Axis while they babysit it.
Funny thing which happened there. So Skada has a mini shield, right? I just completely forgot that there's a part of Zeri's kit where you get to steal shields.
Oh, right. I forgot there's more stuff that she needs.
I completely forgot that happens. Well, we'll have to, I guess, track that as it goes through. So it's just like, huh, what's that a particle effect around Hybrid? Wait, he just stole Skada's shield. I just completely forgot about that. Funny what happens.
You get movement speed when you steal it, too.
You get like 10% movement speed. You get to steal them out of the shield that comes through. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, okay. Well, that was a quick blast from the past for me. Been a while since
we've been through like 10 variations of Zeri already, so sometimes it's hard to remember what she does.
Every patch since release, Zeri has been featured on it. Been a champion, which is a little bit hard to hit the mark. Now, I actually don't dislike Zeri as a champion. I think that the mechanics are quite intriguing. Do I think it's balanced? No, but I think it's interesting for now. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Season 5 champions, which took a little while for them to be balanced too. If you remember the old days of Azir and Rek'Sai, Tahm Kench, Kalista, champions that really took a while to come back in line. Speaking of Season 5, that's where Zed was actually around for a little while too. Was a bit of an answer into champions like Talia, which started coming up a little later into the meta. But in this game, when you have these Zhonyas and that crown, it's a little hard to find your all-ins now. And while we are in those side lanes, you've actually, as CGA, won enough of the big fights. You managed to survive through to a point where your side lanes are fine, and now you can start looking for the fights all on your own.
Yep, that is going to be Sangchu's ultimate popped. It's not going to be available for any sort of forward motion. Not that we've seen Axis really try and make a successful forward push in the past 15 minutes or so. But this opens up so much space now for CGA to move into the opposing territory, clear out this vision. Although it looks like they're content to just reset and spend their gold with this Drake coming up in 45 seconds. Keep that focus on the bot side where Nap has been so effective in keeping priority for the past few minutes.
The game's slowed down a little bit. Feels like CGR are playing around objective timers. Not really looking for killer blows themselves. I think they could have afforded to be a little bit more aggressive with that gold lead, but still, playing it safe and playing around the objective timers is by no means a bad way to play the game. It's a very consistent way to close out games, and they're certainly hitting the items to look to do that in the next fight. Nap is maybe doing a bit of cooldown counting, seeing how far Yellow Yoshi is going to shove up, and looking for an all. He actually hasn't managed to look for an all-in for a little while. Let's see if he can do anything here.
Yeah, just gonna sort of watch Yellow Yoshi walk on by.
Okay.
That's
just a bit of sleuthing, and that's all we're gonna see.
Not the most exciting Akali gameplay, but we'll get to it. He's been dynamite in the team fights. I'm sure we'll see some more of it, especially now that this Drake is up. Although, Axis, this is sort of like the Hail Mary. It looks like they're pinging towards that Baron, but not going to start it. So that Infernal Drake just goes by without any response from Axis.
Yeah, and that's the state which Axis are in. It's like, wow, we're going to not fight around these objectives. Woo, we can play side lanes. Wait, no, we cannot do that. There's only so many times we can say that this game. So, that's kind of just what's happening with Axis. They don't get to commit towards that dragon. They lose out on that, and they are just losing across the board right now. And it's a little sad to see from Axis, who actually have managed to pick up a number of good wins this split. They've not nearly been as in a dire state as we thought they would be, as a bottom 2 team, one that was kind of really struggling to stay relevant. This team is actually one which is fighting for playoffs, but for them, in one of these push and shove games, haven't managed to find many answers. It's a little sad, because we'd come to expect maybe a little more from them.
Yeah, especially when you see Mega Man locking in the Zed, the early lane action, the 7 HP, walk away from the explosion cool guy moment that he had. It felt like we were in for a lot more of a treat game, but there is still time. You do have this late game Sivir scaling. Maybe they can find something, but not when you get chunked out and engaged on like that. Chase all the way back to the base gates. That's the first kill already over to CGA, and it could just be the death knell coming through, as that's big cooldowns blown in the back half as well for Axis. Jungler down, no ult on Yellow Yoshi. Can they contest this Baron? It looks like CGA is revving up to start.
You have yourself a death mark and a dream. Not even sure Mega Man can really commit to this. I think this will be it. This will be the play which finally puts the game to bed. And CGA, they find themselves, they fight on objective timers, but away from the objectives themselves. They get my priority, manage to get themselves that Baron, and that should honestly now be the closing of this game.
Yeah, the answer was... the answer was one
bonus
mid-lane
points
turret.
if you get to Photoshop August's face onto the presenter, but...
Oh, true. We do have a replay here in Nightmare of a fight. A sad fight it was.
And this is the point where this is one of the few times where Sanctuary's actually managed to sit and auto-attack, but this is after the gold league's already been established. If this happened 15 minutes ago, maybe it gets a little closer, but CJ playing around their power spikes, playing around those group fights, and now are in a position... I love that. I love that so much. Shout out to Chris, who's been producing so much for us and is our creative director, and creative ever is he. Axis, we've been asking for some creativity, haven't really managed to find anything of the sort, and slowly and surely falling towards the death of this game.
Yeah, bleeding out, it feels like, as we move towards this 30-minute mark. The biggest answer has really been just some consolation turrets, and that's not enough to give yourself a solid presence. And it just feels like this composition, if it can't play through the side lanes, I mean, we've beaten on home, it doesn't really have a home in the 5v5, so maybe you can count on some Sivir turtling and a dream, bring it back Season 3 style, but we spent a lot of time this game, Nightmare, looking back towards the past, because the future does not look very bright for Axis, especially as their base begins to fall around.
Yeah, well, never having fairly low HP, maybe there's something that could have worked that, but actually Cassin, a little bit separated. This could be a fun pick.
Fast Scorpion brings Warrior into the enemy base, but look at that zap coming over the wall to actually equalize things. Hybrid doesn't connect on the ultimate, but Dicey moves forward to find something. Nap, however, wreaking havoc in the back line. Akali popping off, Yellow Yoshi against the world. I don't think it'll be enough, although the needlework finding something. Maybe he can sustain through. Dodges the seismic shove, but cannot dodge his death this now. Megaman rejoins the party, but the Weaver's Wall coming all the way out, coming all the way through. Cocoon forcing the flash, forcing down the inhibitor. CGA continue to dominate through this fight.
Oh, that's going to be the base broken, inhibitor falls, and this is what you can do when you're ahead of this composition. Axis had to blow so much onto a Jin Zhao, onto the jungler. That's not a priority target. That's not the backline which you want to reach, and I was very much worried when it came to the 5v5s. How do you reach the targets you really want to through this jungle and support? When you have the Jin Zhao ultimate, when you have the Alistar blocking too, and the question is, with great difficulty, this is a little bit of a misposition from Kassin. I've seen a couple of aggressive positioning moves from Kassin which have almost been punished, but he's been getting enough HP back for the Gold Drinker to make it just about worth it. And while Sivir actually did manage to do some damage in that fight, it just really isn't nearly enough at this point.
No, and it was a nice little reflex move from Kassin as well to get back over the wall with the dash coming on out, but not nearly enough for Axis as we do move into the death knell period, the rollover and decay period. As Dicey looking for something, though, a little bit of life still being shown. That's more of a priority target. They find the ultimate onto Nap. They skewer him and drag him back, but now the Shroud into the ultimate, that perfect execution, means he can just keep on living while Hybrid free fires, while he chases back Swamp, while he crushes the Scorpion underneath his heel. And it's just going to be more of the same. CGA not ever looking like they're really sweating in these fights. It's Cocoon going so far back to reach this wave, and it looks like they might just go for the end right here, right now.
Oh, so few cooldowns to play around. Axis gonna have to watch the arrayed members of Crest Gaming app crush down their Nexus and jump ahead of them even further in the standings.
Yeah, that will be the Nexus falling. We were a little bit worried because if there was any team that was going to lose this game, it would be CGA, but they came through with the heads up this time around and did wind up taking it on home. They will hold on to that 5th place position quite strongly, picking it on up. And yeah, just a really solid game all the way through. I do have to ask, though, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more on the desk, does CGA lose this game against maybe some of the other teams near the top of the table in the LJL?
Well, the thing is, there are two parts to this, right? Because I think Hybrid had a great game, and we do talk about Hybrid a lot in regards to this iteration of CJ. Rightfully so. He's their main carry. But I want to really talk about Nap in this case. You know, he ended up really abusing a matchup, which I thought was going to be a little more Gwen-sided. I thought it'd be a bit more even. But Nap has this split individually been a real force for Crest Gaming Act. I think even against a better team who was on a little bit better form than Axis, who couldn't quite make things work in this game, I think CGA, with Nap playing like that, would have had a very solid win against any team in the LJL.
Yeah, it was a very big performance coming on through. We'll be back to break it down in even more detail on the desk after a short break, so stick around. We'll return.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Smart Swan, Infinite Dodge, and Nightmare. No, that way. That's the other way. I'm not used to cameras. It's not like I've been doing this for several years. Who knows that? I know one thing that is for sure, though. Crest Gaming Axe secured a victory. The head-to-head, which weirdly important versus Axis. Not something I'd expect to say at the beginning of this season, but it's where we're at right now. And an important thing to note is this was a game that began out in the pick and ban phase more than anything else. And I mean, it's crazy that happened, but I want to highlight a certain champion, a certain player that I was particularly excited for when they entered in, a player that was slightly in the running for a period of time for the Rookie of the Season back last year, though. And Nightmare, that is Megamin on his Zed, who, well, did he ever really get going?
He almost did. Solo kill first blood under tower. It reminds me of, there was a game in season 5, I believe it was, between SKT and the Rocks Tigers, when Rocks Tigers was starting to like take over the league in the LCK, and Faker goes in for an all-in level 3 and doesn't get the kill, and then doesn't get rolling, and things get crazy. Actually, Megman manages to do that here, and he walks away with, like, I believe chat actually said 7 HP.
That was me in chat, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it said 11 on the HP bar, but like there was like a 7 in there somewhere. And it was incredibly close. Walks away with that. And we think, okay, right, this guy who had come into the league last year and was struggling a little bit, tried to play some more mechanical champions, didn't really work out on it, and it took a while to figure out his active champion pool. It's great to see this player evolve to the point where they kind of feel confident enough to bring out that old main of theirs, the old reliable, old faithful, and actually make something work with it on the stage. But one solo kill in lane does not a great game make.
No, and sadly, melee champions just haven't come back into the meta. AD meta champions in mid, one day, maybe. Not now, though. Control mages still reign supreme. Talia coming back into the meta.
Disagrees.
Silas, yeah, but
AP melee champion, Nightmare, doesn't count. He's a burst mage. He's not an assassin, if there's even a difference between such things.
Dodge backing me up. I love it. 2-on-1 action. Though Nightmare would probably be able to take us mechanically, Dodge. It's all on you, mate. You don't as well.
You don't want to see my gangplank, but yeah.
Okay, well.
Moving back.
Would like to see, though, something we would like to see and highlight more than anything is Axis actually struggling in a lot of these early team fights. I want to talk about specifically that Rift Herald #1 Dodge coming over to you, because this was a pivotal moment. This was a place where Axis were only about 1k behind at this point. CJ mostly getting their edges down through just better laning phases, but it was his first team fight where it really all kicked off.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this was going to be Cocoon coming in with that Reaver's Wall that actually separated Axis into 2 separate sort of camps. And I feel like that's sort of indicative of how a lot of the fights in this game went. They were very split. And unfortunately, while they were split up, whichever side of the skirmish the Zeri was in, the Zeri was doing work. She was autoing down these members, just being a nuisance, as she so often does. Meanwhile, Sangchu on the Sivir, not really doing the same. A lot of time spent not really doing much at all for the Sivir, unfortunately.
No, and this was also a moment that Nap was able to do a lot, but I want to specify more so on Hybrid and his Zeri, because it was in multiple team fights. Dragon #3 Nightmare, where honestly, he was just able to completely auto-attack almost from beginning to end, even dived forward, if you remember.
And that's something which Hybrid has uniquely done within the LJL, actually. This is one of the reasons why actually Middlecott, who's kind of the resident CGA stan nowadays, has really valued this player. In fact, kind of calling him one of, if not the best AD carries in the LJL when they're on the aggressive front foot. When you look at what happened in these team fights, yes, Axis was struggling in these team fights. The big reason for that for me is because the AD carries were auto-attacking at such different rates. Sivir was basically not hitting anyone. You don't actually have a solid target to hit to ricochet through the backline a lot of the time with this Sivir. So the draft is a little bit difficult with that unless the Alistar is basically giving you free damage onto the backline by going in first. It wasn't really that. It was actually mainly going to be someone like Nap, who then goes into a Shroud, can't even auto-attack them. On the other side, Hybrid on this Seri just gets free reign. The Zed isn't doing enough damage to really get to that point. You're not crushing through the front line quick enough to really threaten this area. So Hybrid had a deathless game, got to run through all of these team fights. And for me, this was the big difference. It was the AD carry auto attack uptime, which led to this huge discrepancy in damage.
The other thing, and it wasn't in our notes or in the post-game conversation we had, but Kassin was huge on this Xin Zhao just never dying. And something you even highlighted, Nightmare, that this was the champion he was kind of making himself known for before it was even meta. So, I mean, it's not a surprise. Gore Drinker is still a very strong item, but I want to come over to you, Dodge, for that final player highlight. And we've been talking about this man several times over. And it's Nap on this Akali, 22 minutes in, 6k ahead our CGA, and Nap feels like that defining member that's kind of just the cherry on the top that's always winning. He even got a solo kill.
Yeah, and, you know, Yelioshi outside of tanks is hit or miss, so the solo kill in top lane maybe to be expected. We got our sort of our expectations cut out from under us because me and Nightmare were sort of thinking in the pregame, like, oh, okay, you know, maybe the Akali isn't as good into the Gwen as it used to be. No, Nap popping off in the lane.
Genuinely, it's not.
Somebody tell Nap he doesn't care. He's going to do it anyway. And what he also did was just pop off in these fights. You know, we were looking more towards like, oh, well, we get this really mechanical sort of matchup between two assassins, Akali and Zed 1v1. But the ultimate difference maker was Nap was crazy in these fights. He's constantly pushing in the side lanes, never getting caught out, showing up to these objective fights, you know, 4-man ultis flying across the whole team, getting all of this damage down. Just a clinic coming in of an Akali performance. Really, really impressive stuff.
If I had to distill this game into two big things, it was Hybrid was the difference maker in team fights, so Axis couldn't take team fights. Nap was the difference maker everywhere else, so Axis had to take team fights. That was the real balance breaker for me. They didn't want to team fight because Hybrid was so strong, but Nap made them. And this was a really good kind of overall performance from CJ to just force Axis into bad positions.
And it's a fantastic one by that. I'm really hearkening back to that one moment when Nap was having to escape the bot lane. Three members of Axis come down to close on him, and he just perfect executions away in the Shroud. Brilliantly called, by the way, Dodge. You should go clip that for your reel. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's game one in the books. Game two will be coming right after this break, and it's going to be Rascal Jesters facing off Dead Nation. Folks, you don't want to miss that. That's a hype matchup. See you in a bit.